Thank you, Priti. Good morning, everyone. Let's now have a look at the top lines in the finance world. World Bank commits $1 billion for India's solar energy program. The loan is the global lender's biggest solar aid for any country and comes as India has set a goal of raising its solar capacity nearly 30 times to 100 gigawatts by 2020 and is attracting mega investment proposals from top companies and also institutions. Money held by Indians in Swiss banks has fallen by nearly one-third to a record low of 8,392 crore rupees amid a continuing global clampdown on the famed secrecy wall of Switzerland's banking system. This is lowest amount of funds held by Indians in Swiss banks ever since data was made public in 1997, and it marks the second straight year of decline. Reserve Bank of India Governor Raghuram Rajan calls on Finance Minister Arun Jaitley as the central bank and the government seek to quickly put in place a new interest rate setting mechanism. A broad-based six-member panel, the Monetary Policy Committee, is being set up to decide on lending rates. India's foreign debt at the end of March 2016 was at $485.6 billion, up by $10.6 billion from that at the end of the same month last year. According to the data released by Reserve Bank of India, India's external debt at end of March 2016 witnessed an increase of 2.2% over its level at the end of March 2015, primarily on account of a rise in outstanding NRI deposits. Well, moving on, the 8 core sectors of the economy grew 2.8% year-on-year in May, having slowed from 8.5% in April. The slowdown was led by weakness in the output in the crude oil and natural gas sectors, which degrew 3.3% and 6.9% respectively. Petroleum refinery output growth too remained weak at 1.2%, while cement, steel and electricity generation growth stood at 2.4%. 3.2% and 4.6% respectively. The sectors that grew strongly were coal, which is up by 5.5%, and fertilizers, which surged by almost 14.8%. Well, moving on to the global markets, to begin with the US markets. US stocks in fact closed higher yesterday, the last day of the quarter in their third straight day of recovery from the post-Brexit sell-off. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose nearly 1.4% for the quarter, while the S&P 500 rose 1.9% for their third straight quarter of gains. Moving on to the European markets, the European stocks rose on Thursday, rebounding for the third consecutive day as Bank of England Governor Mark Carney signalled policymakers will cut UK rates from historic lows to deal with the Brexit-related fallout. Well, moving on to the Asian markets, the stocks rose in the early trade today as global riskier assets continue to recover from last week's Brexit shock. In fact, a number of Asian central banks, including those in Japan and China, are expected to ease their policy further later this year, and this also is impacting markets in a positive way. Moving on to the Indian markets, the BSE Sensex and National Stock Exchange Nifty have closed higher as investors focused on improving prospects of the domestic economy. In fact, the domestic sentiment was also buoyed due to short covering by participants, with yesterday being the last trading session of the June series of derivative contracts. Well, those are the updates in the finance world. Once again, back to Preeti and Sakal.
All right.